A police chief walked into my courtroom and informed me that he runs this town. What he did not know was that I had been waiting 3 years for someone exactly like him to make exactly that mistake. By the time he understood what was unfolding around him, FBI agents were already coming through my doors, and his entire world was about to come apart in front of 73 witnesses. Let me tell you how a routine traffic matter became the most explosive arrest I have ever witnessed from this bench. The file appeared ordinary in every way. Case number 2-023-TR4418. Police Chief Marcus Donovan, age 48, cited for running a red light at the intersection of Highland and 7th. The complainant was Officer Rachel Chen, a 29-year-old traffic officer who had been on the force for 6 years. Nothing in the paperwork suggested this would become the case that ended a career and exposed a corruption ring stretching back a decade. But 43 years of this work have taught me one thing reliably: the simplest cases often conceal the deepest rot. Chief Donovan arrived at exactly 9:30 in the morning, 15 minutes ahead of his scheduled appearance. I observed him through the small window in my chambers as he moved through the courtroom. Everything about his entrance communicated entitlement. The way he nodded at the bailiff, as though granting the man permission to exist. The way he occupied the front row, with his legs spread wide, claiming space intended for 3 people. The custom-tailored uniform that likely cost more than Officer Chen earned in 2 months. I had encountered his particular variety of person before. Men who had spent so long confusing authority with immunity that the distinction had vanished entirely from their thinking. When I took the bench and called his case, he rose slowly, deliberately, making everyone present wait. His attorney, a high-priced defense lawyer named Gerald Hutchkins, rose beside him in a suit that cost what most people pay for a used vehicle. "Your Honor," Hutchkins began, "my client pleads not guilty to this citation. We believe Officer Chen made an error in judgment, and we are prepared to demonstrate that Chief Donovan's reputation and 26 years of exemplary service should be considered heavily in these proceedings." I set down my pen and looked directly at Donovan. "Chief," I said, "is your attorney speaking for you, or do you have something to add?" That was when he made his first mistake. He dismissed Hutchkins with a wave of his hand and addressed me directly. "Your Honor, I appreciate you hearing this matter, but frankly, this is a waste of everyone's time. Officer Chen is young, inexperienced, and she clearly failed to recognize my vehicle. I have already spoken with her supervisor about additional training. The temperature in my courtroom dropped noticeably. You spoke with her supervisor," I repeated slowly, "about her need for additional training because she cited you for running a red light." "Exactly," Donovan said, missing the danger in my tone entirely. "These young officers become overzealous. They have not yet learned how things work." I leaned forward. "Explain to me how things work, Chief Donovan." He smiled. He actually smiled at me as though we were sharing a private understanding. "Your Honor, I have been in law enforcement since before Officer Chen was born. I run the police department in this city. There are circumstances that require immediate response, situations in which traffic laws become secondary to public safety. I am certain you understand." "Were you responding to an emergency on the night of September 14th? I asked. "Not exactly an emergency, but I was handling department business at 11:45 at night, running a red light in a personal vehicle," I said. "What department business requires that?" His smile faded slightly. "I do not believe I need to explain my duties to this court." And there it was, the arrogance I had been waiting for him to show me. "Actually, Chief, you do. You are in my courtroom facing a citation. Your badge does not entitle you to special treatment. So let me ask again, were you responding to an emergency?" Donovan's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I believe you are missing the broader picture here. Enlighten me." He glanced at his attorney, who was attempting frantically to signal him to stop. "Men like Donovan never know when to stop. I have been police chief for 12 years, he said. "I know every judge in this building. I play golf with the mayor. I have dinner with city council members. I run this city's law enforcement. Everyone here understands that when I make a decision, it is the right decision. That includes decisions about when traffic laws apply to me. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Even the court reporter paused for a moment. I removed my glasses slowly and cleaned them with deliberate care. It is a gesture I use when I need a moment to govern my response. Because what Chief Marcus Donovan did not know was that I had been gathering information about him for 3 years. Ever since Officer Rachel Chen first contacted my clerk, frightened, asking whether there was any way to report corruption without passing through the normal channels that the police chief controlled. Officer Chen was not the first person to reach out. She was the seventh. And across 36 months, a picture had developed of a police chief who operated his department like a personal kingdom. Officers who questioned him found themselves working night shifts in the most dangerous neighborhoods. Citizens who filed complaints suddenly discovered code enforcement violations appearing at their properties. Anyone who dared to challenge him officially learned that evidence had a way of disappearing. But Chen was different. She had kept meticulous records, dashboard camera footage, audio recordings, documentation of every threat and every instance of intimidation, every occasion when Donovan had used his position to escape accountability, and she had done something else. She had contacted the FBI. Special Agent Patricia Morrison had been constructing a federal case against Donovan for 18 months. Corruption, abuse of power, witness intimidation, civil rights violations. They had been waiting for the right moment to move, assembling evidence, documenting patterns, building an airtight case, and I had been waiting as well, waiting for Donovan to walk into my courtroom and provide the final piece himself. I placed my glasses back on and looked at the man who believed he ran this town. Chief Donovan, I said, did you just inform this court that traffic laws do not apply to you because of your position? He realized his mistake too late. I did not mean it in that manner, Your Honor. I simply meant, you meant exactly what you said. You believe you stand above the law. His attorney stepped forward. Your Honor, my client misspoke. He is under stress. I raised my hand. Counselor, your client just stated his belief that he possesses special privileges in this courtroom. That statement is now part of the official record. At that moment, my bench radio crackled softly, precisely on schedule. I watched Special Agent Morrison come through the courtroom doors, her FBI credentials visible at her belt. 3 additional agents followed, positioning themselves at each exit. The timing was almost poetic. Donovan's expression traveled from confident to confused to terrified in the space of approximately 3 seconds. His attorney appeared on the verge of physical collapse. The gallery erupted in whispers. Chief Donovan, I said calmly, it appears we have some visitors. Agent Morrison approached the bench. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. We have a federal warrant for the arrest of Marcus Donovan on charges of corruption, abuse of authority, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. She turned to face Donovan, whose expensive uniform had suddenly taken on the quality of a costume. Chief Donovan, you are under arrest. The words settled over the room like something solid. Donovan's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. His attorney was already stepping backward, presumably calculating how quickly he could establish distance from this situation. This is insane, Donovan finally managed. You cannot simply walk in here and— Actually, we can, Morrison said, her voice without warmth. We have been investigating you for 18 months. Wire fraud, extortion, tampering with evidence, witness intimidation. Shall I continue? I leaned forward. Chief Donovan, let me share something with you. 3 years ago, Officer Rachel Chen contacted my office. She was frightened, but she was also exceptionally brave. She told me about the retaliation, the threats, the systematic way you destroyed anyone who questioned you. Donovan's eyes moved around the courtroom, searching for an exit that did not exist. She was not alone, I continued. 6 other officers came forward with the same account. A police chief who treated his badge as a crown, who believed his position made him untouchable, who genuinely believed that laws existed for everyone except him. Morrison produced handcuffs. The metallic sound they made carried through the silent room. Wait, Donovan's voice fractured. Your Honor, please. I have a family. I have a career. This will destroy everything. I stood, which I do rarely. When I stand, everyone present understands that something of significance is about to be said. Chief Donovan, do you understand what you just said? You are concerned about your career being destroyed. Let me tell you about the careers you destroyed. Officer Chen, demoted after questioning your expense reports. Officer Martinez, transferred to the most dangerous district in this city after filing a complaint. Officer Thompson, terminated on fabricated charges after refusing to participate in covering up your misconduct. My voice grew harder. You want to discuss families? Consider Sarah Mitchell, the woman whose assault case evidence vanished because her attacker contributed to your campaign. Consider James Rodriguez, whose business suddenly faced health code violations after he complained about your officers harassing his customers. Donovan's legs were visibly unsteady. Morrison moved closer with the handcuffs. Your Honor, his attorney attempted one final time. Your client, I said sharply, is going to be quiet. He has said more than enough. In fact, what he said is precisely what completed this case, because when he walked through those doors today and told me he was above the law, when he described his connections and his authority and his special standing, he gave us everything we needed. I looked at Agent Morrison. This hearing has been recorded throughout? Yes, Your Honor. Audio and video, his statements regarding his relationship with traffic laws, his claims about which laws apply to him, all part of the official record. Donovan finally understood the full shape of what had occurred. The traffic citation was never the point. It was the invitation to say the thing that would finish him. You arranged this, he whispered. No, Chief, you arranged this. I simply created the space, and you walked in and made every choice yourself. I sat back down. Agent Morrison, he is yours. The handcuffs closed around Donovan's wrists. The sound of metal connecting, the sound of accountability reaching someone who had outrun it for years. Marcus Donovan, Morrison began, you have the right to remain silent. As she read the Miranda rights, I watched his face. The arrogance had evacuated it completely. The confidence was gone. What remained was a man finally registering that the power he had carried for 12 years had been an illusion, maintained only because no one had been willing to challenge it directly. The gallery held its breath. Officer Chen sat in the back row with tears on her face. Not tears of grief, tears of relief. 3 years of fear, 3 years of careful documentation, 3 years of wondering whether anyone with authority would ever hold this man to account. Morrison finished reading the rights. Do you understand them as I have explained them? Donovan nodded weakly. I require a verbal response, Morrison said. Yes. His voice was barely audible. They began escorting him out, but I was not finished. Chief Donovan, I said. He turned back, his wrists secured, the expensive uniform now seeming to belong to someone else entirely. You told me you run this town. You told me everyone understands that when you make a decision, it is the right decision. You told me you know every judge in this building. I paused. You were wrong about all of it. You never ran this town. The law runs this town. And today, the law caught up to you. His attorney had already moved toward the exit with his briefcase. Donovan's face gave way to something that looked like the belated arrival of reality. Federal charges, multiple counts, years of legal consequence. Morrison indicated to her agents, and they guided Donovan toward the side door. That was when something unexpected occurred. Officer Chen stood from her seat in the gallery. Every head in the room turned toward her. She walked down the center aisle, her uniform immaculate, her badge catching the courtroom light. She stopped directly in front of Donovan. For a moment, no one moved. The agents holding his arms tensed. Morrison's hand shifted instinctively. Chen looked at the man who had spent 3 years making her life a deliberate exercise in fear. The man who had threatened her career, her safety, and her sense of whether doing the right thing was survivable. She saluted him, not as an expression of respect, as a statement of conclusion, a formal acknowledgement that his command had ended, that his authority over her was finished, that she had outlasted him. Then she turned to me, nodded once, and said thank you. She walked back to her seat with her head up and her shoulders straight. The courtroom held the moment, understanding collectively what it meant. Morrison broke the quiet. "Let us go, Chief." They moved him through the side door. It closed with a weight that sounded permanent. I released a breath I had not fully registered I was holding. 43 years on this bench, and cases of this kind still arrive with their own particular weight. Not because of legal complexity, because of what they represent. The moment when someone who has moved through the world believing they are untouchable discovers they are not. The gallery began producing sound again. Reporters were communicating rapidly on their devices. Local news would have this within minutes. National coverage within the hour. "Your Honor," my clerk approached quietly, 17 media requests for comment have already come in. Tell them I have no comment. The record speaks for itself. She nodded and withdrew. I looked at the people remaining in the courtroom. Some were crying, some were smiling, some simply appeared stunned. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying through the noise, "what you witnessed today is not a victory celebration. It is a reminder that the law applies to everyone, that badges and titles and political relationships do not create immunity. They create responsibility." I stood, which I rarely do, after a case has concluded. Chief Donovan spent years operating under the belief that he was beyond accountability. He was not the first person to hold that belief. He will not be the last. But every time someone with power abuses it, every time someone concludes that the rules belong to everyone except themselves, they are making a wager. They are betting they will not be caught. They are betting that no one will care enough to stop them. They are betting incorrectly. A young woman in the third row raised her hand carefully, a law student by the textbook in her lap. "Yes," I said. "How did you know he would incriminate himself?" "A fair question." "I did not know. I hoped." Arrogance is predictable. When someone genuinely believes they are untouchable, they cannot resist telling you about it. They require you to understand how significant they are. Donovan entered this courtroom expecting intimidation to function the way it always had. He could not conceive of a situation in which it would not. Another hand came up from an older man, possibly in his late 60s. "What happens to the cases he corrupted?" "That becomes the FBI's responsibility now. They will examine every case he touched, every arrest, every charge, every piece of evidence that passed through his department. Some cases will hold, some will not. People wrongfully convicted will receive new proceedings. People who escaped accountability will face it. It is complicated and it is necessary." My bailiff Martinez approached the bench. He had been with me for 15 years and seen nearly everything. "Judge, we need to clear the room. Your next case is scheduled in 20 minutes. I checked my watch." He was right. "Thank you, Martinez." I addressed the room one final time. "Court is adjourned. Please exit through the main doors." People filed out slowly, still absorbing what they had witnessed. Officer Chen was the last to leave. She paused at the door and looked back across the empty courtroom at me. Our eyes met. She produced a small but genuine smile. Then she was gone. Martinez began organizing the papers. "That was something, Judge." "Yes, it was." "Do you think he takes a deal?" "Absolutely. The FBI has an overwhelming case against him, and now his own recorded statements are part of the record. His attorney will negotiate something to avoid a public trial. He will still serve significant time, but the spectacle of proceedings will be avoided." "How much time would you estimate?" "Federal corruption charges, abuse of power, obstruction of justice. If he is sensible, he accepts whatever they offer, somewhere between 7 and 15 years, depending on what surfaces in his files." Martinez produced a low whistle. His wife was in the lobby earlier. She left when she spotted Morrison and her team. That detail carried more weight than I expected. The people surrounding men like Donovan always pay a share of the cost. His wife, his children if he had them, would carry the weight of his name for years. Did she say anything? Only asked when the hearing was scheduled to begin. Then she saw the agents and turned around. My phone produced a notification, a text from the courthouse administrator. Media gathering outside, security adding personnel. "Martinez," I said, "no cameras inside the building. Press credentials stay in the designated area. Already arranged, Judge. Captain Reynolds anticipated it. Sound man, Reynolds. Former military background, ran courthouse security with the precision of someone who had learned to prevent problems rather than respond to them. I gathered my notes from the Donovan matter. This file would enter the record, sealed during the federal investigation, then eventually released. Years from now, law students would examine it. Officers would encounter it in ethics training. Department administrators would reference it when designing accountability protocols, but at this moment, I had 17 additional cases waiting on my docket. A domestic matter, 2 driving under the influence hearings, a property boundary dispute, the steady machinery of justice that keeps civil society from coming apart. I straightened my robe and walked back to chambers. My clerk, Sarah, was waiting with coffee. Black, no sugar. She knew without being told. FBI is requesting a copy of the courtroom recording, she said. Provide it. Everything is already part of the public record. She hesitated. Judge, Channel 7 has called. They want to discuss an interview. No, they mentioned compensation. Still no, I do not give interviews. I do my job. Sarah left, closing the door carefully. I sat at my desk, the same desk I had occupied for 23 years, solid oak covered in files that never seemed to diminish regardless of how many I closed. This room had been present for thousands of decisions, some uncomplicated, most not, all of them necessary. My phone rang. Unknown number. Something made me answer it. Judge? A female voice, young, audibly nervous. Who is calling? My name is Rebecca Torres. I am an officer in Chief Donovan's department. I watched what happened today. It is already everywhere. I waited and let her continue. I have information about other cases. Things he caused to disappear. Evidence he destroyed. I have been documenting everything for months, but I did not know who to trust. She was thinking clearly. You should be speaking with Special Agent Morrison, not with me. I understand that. I will call her. I simply wanted to thank you first for not backing down, for demonstrating that it is possible to stand up to him. Her voice developed a slight crack. I have spent 8 months watching him operate, knowing what he was doing, afraid of what would happen if I said anything. Officer Torres, fear is a normal response. What determines character is what you choose to do despite it. Contact Morrison today. Tell her everything. The FBI will provide protection. I will. Thank you, Judge. She ended the call. I sat holding the phone, thinking about all the Officer Torreses out there. Good officers observing bad officers damage the profession they believed in, frozen by the fear of what retaliation might look like. Donovan's corruption was not only about his individual choices, it was about the culture of silence he cultivated, the atmosphere of intimidation that made decent people afraid to speak. Martinez knocked and opened the door. Judge, your next matter is here. The Henderson dissolution, yes? Back to work. Give me 5 minutes. I reviewed the Henderson file. Married 12 years, 2 children, disputed custody and asset division. A standard dissolution matter, except that Mr. Henderson claimed his wife had concealed financial assets, and she claimed he had been unfaithful. Both were probably right about each other. This was the work that filled most of my days. Not dramatic confrontations with corrupt officials, but the quiet desperation of people whose lives had arrived at a breaking point. Marriage endings, custody arrangements, property divisions. The small tragedies that never generate headlines, but represent the genuine fabric of what courts exist to address. I walked back to the courtroom. The Hendersons were positioned on opposite sides, their attorneys in place. Neither would look at the other. 12 years of shared history reduced to enforced silence. This court is now in session. Case number 2, 024-DR8851, Henderson versus Henderson. Mrs. Henderson's attorney stood and delivered the opening that I had heard 10,000 variations of. The words were always slightly different. The pain underneath was always the same. We worked through 90 minutes of financial records, bank statements, property documentation, retirement accounts, everything they had constructed together, now being divided with clinical precision. Mr. Henderson's attorney presented evidence of concealed assets. Mrs. Henderson's attorney countered with documentation of infidelity. The exchange continued with the quality of watching two people methodically reduce each other. Eventually, I indicated that I had heard what I needed. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. "Joint custody on alternating weeks. The family home is sold and proceeds divided equally. Retirement accounts are divided according to state law. Your attorneys will draft the final agreement, and you will both sign it without subjecting your children to any further portion of this process." Mrs. Henderson began crying quietly. Mr. Henderson looked at the table without moving. "I know you both believe you are fighting for what is right," I said. "You are not. You are fighting because you are hurt, and you want the other person to feel it. Your children are observing all of this. Stop." They departed separately, their attorneys trailing behind them. In 6 months, they would be legally separated. In 6 years, perhaps they would manage to occupy the same space without the weight of this between them. That is the actual work of this courtroom, not viral moments or dramatic confrontations, but the grinding daily business of helping people navigate the worst periods of their lives with some measure of dignity intact. I heard 4 additional cases that afternoon: a landlord and tenant in dispute over unpaid rent, a driving under the influence defendant who arrived at his own hearing intoxicated, a small claims matter involving a damaged wedding dress, a probation violation. Each case mattered completely to the people involved. Each one deserved my full attention and fair judgment. By 5 o'clock, my voice was showing the day. Martinez was closing down the courtroom for the evening. "Judge, do you need anything?" "No, I am fine. See you tomorrow, same time." I walked to my car through the employee exit, avoiding the news crews still positioned at the main entrance. They would eventually move on. Something else would become the story. Driving home, I thought about Officer Chen standing in that courtroom, frightened, but fully committed to being there. I thought about Rebecca Torres gathering documentation for months, waiting for the right moment to trust someone with what she knew. I thought about all the people who choose to do the right thing when choosing otherwise would be considerably easier. That is what keeps me returning to this bench. Not the significant cases, but the knowledge that someone somewhere is watching, someone who needs to witness the system functioning as it was designed to function. That courage matters in practice, not only in principle, that standing up to people who abuse power is genuinely possible. Tomorrow, there would be more cases and more people and more decisions, but tonight justice was served, and that is sufficient. I have spent 4 decades on this bench because I hold to something simple. No one stands above the law, not police chiefs, not politicians, not people with resources or relationships or decades of accumulated influence. The moment we begin creating exceptions, the entire structure begins to fail. Chief Donovan learned that in the most direct way available. Officer Chen demonstrated that a single person with sufficient courage and sufficient patience can change the outcome. And tomorrow I will be back in that courtroom because this work has no ending. It only has the next case.